There are verses in the Qur'an that make even the strongest hearts tremble. Ibn Arabi once said, "The greatest fear of the believer is not hell, it is being forgotten by Allah." And in his writings, he described 4 kinds of people whom Allah may never forgive, not because His mercy has limits, but because these souls turn away from that mercy even when it reaches for them. The first is the one who knows the truth yet mocks it. This person hears the call to prayer, understands its meaning, but answers with arrogance, "I'll pray later, I'm not ready, I already believe in my heart." Ibn Arabi said, "To delay obedience when you know the truth is to close the door that Allah Himself has opened." These are the people who wear faith on their tongue but bury it beneath pride. The second is the one who harms others while claiming to serve Allah. The man who prays in the mosque but lies in his business, the woman who recites Qur'an but poisons another's name. They polish their words with piety, yet their hearts are rusted with envy. Ibn Arabi wrote, "Worship without mercy is like a candle without flame, it gives no light." The third kind is the one who never repents. Allah forgives endlessly, but not those who never ask. It is not the sin that destroys the soul, it is the silence after sin. Those who feel no guilt, who live as if Allah cannot see them, who believe they can hide from His gaze, they build a prison of their own making. If you stop feeling shame, Ibn Arabi said, your heart has already died. And finally, the fourth, those who despair of Allah's mercy. The ones who say, "It's too late for me, I've done too much wrong, Allah would never forgive me." Ibn Arabi called this the greatest betrayal, not of Allah, but of hope. For despair is the whisper of Shaitan dressed in humility. It says, "You are beyond redemption," when in truth, Allah is closer than your breath. These 4 types live among us and sometimes within us. We all carry pieces of them at different times: pride, cruelty, carelessness, hopelessness. Yet even here, Ibn Arabi left a key. The unforgivable becomes forgiven when the heart trembles again. Meaning, the moment you feel fear, regret, longing, or tears in your chest, Allah's door opens. It never truly closed. But if the heart remains cold, untouched, unmoved, then the mercy that reigns upon all things slides right off. So ask yourself tonight, which one are you becoming? And if any of these shadows have touched you, do not wait for tomorrow. Because forgiveness isn't found in the next prayer, it begins the instant you say, from the depth of your soul, "Ya Allah, I have wronged myself. Forgive me before I forget how to ask." The night grows quiet after such a confession. The air itself seems to listen. Ibn Arabi once wrote, "The one who kneels in shame is closer to Allah than the one who stands in pride." Those words haunted the man who read them. He sat alone in his room, the world asleep around him, but his heart was awake, trembling, restless, raw. He thought of the years he had wasted chasing respect from people while ignoring the gaze of the one who made him. He remembered every moment he'd chosen silence instead of prayer, every time he'd seen wrong and said, "It's not my problem." Now, all of it echoed back like 1,000 unanswered calls. The walls seemed to close in, and the only escape was the floor beneath him. So he fell, not by accident, but by surrender. "Ya Allah," he whispered, "I am one of the 4. Maybe all of them. I have been proud, I have been cruel, I have delayed, and I have doubted. But if you still call me, I am listening now." Tears began to fall, but they did not feel like pain, they felt like washing. In that darkness, his heart started to soften, and he realized the greatest secret of all: even those whom Allah will never forgive can be forgiven if they turn before the door closes. Because the warning was never meant to condemn, it was meant to awaken. Ibn Arabi said, "Allah's wrath is not punishment, it is the shadow of His love, pulling you back to the light." When the man finally raised his head, he felt something shift, not in the room, but within. The same sins that once weighed on him now became the very reason he fell into sincerity. That is the paradox of mercy: the darker your past, the brighter your return. He wiped his face and smiled through the tears. If you've given me one more breath, it must mean you still want me back. And with that, he whispered his final prayer for the night, Ya Rahman, let me never be one of the four again. If pride blinds me, break it. If cruelty touches me, cleanse it. If I delay, remind me. If I despair, embrace me. For without you, I am nothing. When dawn came, light spilled through the window and touched his face. It wasn't the same morning as before, it felt like forgiveness itself had taken the shape of sunlight. For the first time in years, he rose before the call to prayer. His heart no longer felt heavy, it was light, trembling, alive. He realized that repentance is not a word, it's a movement, from arrogance to humility, from darkness to light, from forgetfulness to remembrance. As he made wudu, the water felt colder, clearer, as if it wasn't just washing his skin, but the weight of his soul. Every drop that touched him whispered, "You are being written anew." He stood for prayer, his hands lifted, his lips shaking with the first words, Allahu Akbar. The sound echoed softly in the empty room, yet it filled every corner of his heart. For once, it wasn't ritual, it was reunion. He remembered what Ibn Arabi had written, a forgiven soul does not boast of mercy, it trembles before it. So he prayed not with pride, but with awe. Between each verse, he felt as if Allah himself was listening, not to his words, but to his intention. When he finished, he didn't ask for wealth or ease or praise. He only said, Ya Allah, keep me near. Because he now understood the secret, the ones Allah never forgives are not defined by their sins, but by their refusal to return. And the ones he embraces endlessly are those who keep walking back, even if they fall 1,000 times. Outside, life went on as usual, people rushing, merchants shouting, children laughing. But for him, the world was no longer noise, it was remembrance. Every sound, every breeze, every face was a verse of the same message, you are seen. You are still loved. Return, again and again. That night, he wrote in his journal. There are four Allah may not forgive. But there is one he always forgives, the one who kneels and says, I was wrong. I will be that one, every day. And with that, he finally slept, not because he was tired, but because his soul had found rest. The days that followed were quiet, yet filled with a peace he had never known. Each sunrise felt like a whispered promise that Allah had not abandoned him, that mercy was still written above his name. He walked differently now, slower, softer. Every step felt like remembrance, every breath like a small act of gratitude. He began to notice people he used to ignore, the poor man outside the mosque, the lonely woman in the market, the child begging for bread. Their eyes reminded him of his own once empty, searching, unseen. So he gave not only what he had, but what he once needed, kindness. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he sat beside an old man in the mosque courtyard. The old man asked, Why do you smile, my son? The world is heavy. He replied, Because I once thought Allah would never forgive me, but He did, by letting me feel again. The old man nodded and said, Then you have truly repented, for real repentance is not crying, it's changing. That night, he opened the Qur'an and his eyes stopped on a verse he had read hundreds of times but never understood until now. Say, O my servants who have transgressed against themselves, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. Indeed, Allah forgives all sins. 39:53. The words hit him like a wave. Do not despair. That was the message, the antidote to everything. Pride, cruelty, neglect, hopelessness, all of it was born from forgetting how vast Allah's mercy truly is. He closed the book and whispered, Ya Allah, let me live as proof of this verse. Let my heart remind others that your mercy never ends. And from that night on, whenever someone said, It's too late for me, he would smile and say, If you can still say Allah's name, it's not too late. The door is still open, because He is the one who never closes it on those who knock. And perhaps that was the true secret Ibn Arabi had tried to teach, that the unforgivable are not those who sin the most, but those who stop believing that Allah's light can reach them. Years passed, and the man who once trembled in darkness became a source of light for others. People began to come to him, not because he was a scholar or a saint, but because peace followed him like a fragrance. They would ask, "How did you change?" And he would always answer the same, "I stopped running from Allah and started walking toward Him even if my legs were weak." He no longer sought perfection. He sought sincerity. If he sinned, he repented quickly. If he fell, he got up quietly. Each failure became another reason to turn back, not away. He remembered Ibn Arabi's words written in an old manuscript: "The sinner who weeps is dearer to Allah than the worshipper who is proud." One evening, a young man came to him, desperate. "I think Allah hates me," he said. "Nothing in my life goes right." The man smiled sadly and replied, "When Allah loves you, He doesn't give you comfort, He gives you awakening. The pain you feel is the sound of your heart being purified. Do not mistake cleansing for cruelty." The young man began to cry. He placed his hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Allah tests those He still wants close. The ones truly abandoned are those who feel nothing at all." Later that night, as he prayed under the flickering light of a lamp, he felt tears well up again, not from guilt, but from gratitude. "Ya Allah," he said, "thank you for not giving up on me when I gave up on myself. Thank you for the storms that broke me and brought me back. Thank you for the fear that led me to faith." When he finished, a deep calm filled the room. He realized that true forgiveness wasn't just about being cleansed from sin, it was about being transformed by it. The same sins that once dragged him down had now become the foundation of his closeness to Allah. Before sleeping, he looked up at the sky and smiled. "I used to ask you for happiness," he whispered. "Now I just ask to never lose this feeling of being yours." And somewhere in the unseen, mercy smiled back, because a heart that remembers Allah after being lost is more beloved than one that never strayed. For in every return lies the beauty of being chosen again. From that night onward, his prayers became quieter, but deeper. He no longer prayed to be seen, or to be spared from hardship, he prayed simply to stay awake, to never fall asleep to Allah's presence again. The world around him kept changing, rulers came and went, fortunes rose and fell, yet his heart remained anchored in one truth: the only loss is to forget the one who never forgets you. He began teaching children in the mosque courtyard. Not from books, but from life. When they asked him, "What does Allah love most?" he said, "A heart that returns." When they asked, "What does He hate most?" he said, "A heart that believes it's too far gone." And every time he said it, he thought of his own past, of the man who once believed he was unforgivable, and how Allah had turned that very thought into his path back home. One morning, before far, he stepped outside and looked at the stars fading into dawn. "Everything ends except your mercy," he whispered. "Everything leaves except you." In that moment, he realized something Ibn Arabi had once written but that only life could teach: the truest repentance is not turning away from sin, it is turning toward love. Years later, when he grew old and his beard turned white, people would still come to him for advice. He would tell them, "Don't chase perfection. Chase presence. Perfection belongs to Allah, but presence is the gift He gives to those who seek Him with sincerity." And when his final night came, he did not weep or fear. He simply smiled, placed his right hand over his heart, and said softly, "Ya Allah, I am coming as I am, flawed, but yours." The next morning, the people found him still in sujud, his lips curved into a peaceful smile. They buried him near the mosque under the open sky, and someone carved on his stone the words he had lived by: "Do not despair of the mercy of Allah. For even the sinner who remembers Him once is remembered forever." And so his story ended where it began, not in sin or sorrow, but in the embrace of the one who had been calling him all along. And so, the story found its final silence, not in words, but in remembrance. The olive tree above his grave kept growing, its roots deep in the earth, its leaves whispering verses to every passing wind. The mosque walls aged, generations changed, but the fragrance of his repentance lingered in the air, that subtle peace only known by those who have truly returned. Long after his name was forgotten, people still came, the broken, the proud, the hopeless. They came with sins heavy as stone, and left with hearts lighter than air. None knew his story, yet all felt it. For mercy doesn't need a name, it only needs a heart ready to receive it. One night, centuries later, a scholar passed by the grave and paused. He whispered a single verse, letting it echo into the night. Indeed, the mercy of my Lord encompasses all things. Qur'an 7:156. And in that moment, he felt it, the same stillness, the same forgiveness, the same light that had once awakened a man lost in his own darkness. Because the story of repentance never truly ends. It passes from one soul to another, like a candle that refuses to die. And so, the final truth remains: no sin is greater than the mercy that created you. Whoever kneels and says, Ya Allah, I have returned, finds the same door open forever, endlessly, mercifully.